Mishpatim asher tishiv lefnehem. And these are the ordinances that you should place before them. And then it talks about ki tacha ebed ivri, sheshanim yavo, mishevis yetzer l'chavshi chinam. And then the seventh he goes out. Now the slave will go out. This applies to both a male Jewish slave over the ages of 13 and over, and a Jewish girl slave over the age of 13, because there's also going to be another category known as an alma for a young maid servant, girl under the age of 12, mitzvah. Now, when it says va'ela and these, it's connecting to the previous parsha. Now, at the end of the previous parsha, we already see that it was dealing with constructing a mizbeach, an altar, so that one could make sacrifices to Hashem and serve Hashem, God. However, now we have a very unusual thing. They were starting with an and now we're going to go into a whole series of laws that seem to be not what we'd call liturgical relation from humans to God, but seems to be dealing with human to their fellow human being. So what is the connection? On a basic level, it teaches us a couple of things. First of all, one of them is that in the Torah, there is no distinction between serving Hashem and serving man, in the sense that they're all part of, individually part of the religion. And we are supposed to serve Hashem, God, in every capacity from morning to night, and even when we're asleep. And we, therefore, that is one lesson that's being taught here. Now, the second question is, why does it start, of all the topics we just had today, Seros Dibros, receiving the Torah with all its majesty and all the voice of, hearing the voice of Hashem, the flaming mountain, and all the other miracles that were connected with it, why are we going to something like a Hebrew slave? Now, a Hebrew slave is somebody who serves for 7 years, well, 6 years actually. Now, there's two cases of when you have the slave, Hebrew slave. One is when he or she stole an object and cannot repay the cost of the object. The other time is if they voluntarily serve themselves into slavery because they cannot afford to live otherwise. Now, one of the explanations that's given for this is that the Jewish people had just gotten out of slavery, and this would be a very easy law for them to connect with. As we're going to see a little later, there's far more meaning to it than that. Now, there are 54 mitzvahs listed in this parsha of the 613 mitzvahs. Many of them are with human to human being, while some of them are serving, humans serving Hashem. And in some, for example, if one's animal causes damage or if a human being causes damage, how they have to compensate for that, for either death or injury. It deals with many laws of how one can financially deal with their fellows, including no charging of interest on loans or any other kinds of financial machinations. It also emphasizes treating people with dignity and respect, whether the most prosperous members of society or the poor members of society, or people on the margins like converts or unfortunately sometimes almanas, widows and orphans. Yet there is many repeated times that they have to be treated with dignity. It even goes with loans. If somebody had to loan out because they were so poor, their blanket, there is the outfit which they use to keep themselves warm at night. The lender cannot go into the house to collect the debt. In fact, he can not even knock at the door. He has to wait. He has to give it back at sunset, and he can take it out at sunrise, but he must let the person, the borrower, bring it out, so there'll be dignity. There is also laws that one must help one's fellow man or woman. In cases, for example, it goes so far that even if one sees somebody that one's enemy and they're having a trouble or burden with their donkey or other animal with its load, one must help the person that they're hostile to. In fact, it even goes so far to extend that even if the person, he has two people to help, one is a good friend and one is the enemy, so to speak, the antagonist, he or she must help the antagonist first. Now, another interesting thing, some of the halachas apply to both the spiritual and the practical, with man to man. And one example we see of this is where it says, Sheish shanim tizra et ratzer nasa et tuvasa b'shavis tishmat meta v'natishta achlu aviv avini amcha yetzera takal hayav haseda kain tesu karmecha zaysia. And then it goes on sheshet shemim tasa maisa biyom hashvi and tishbat l'man hanoach sherecha v'chamrecha Yanafshi ben Machta and Hager. And these translate as follows. It said, 6 years you shall let the land and gather in the seed the land and gather in its produce. In the 7th you shall leave it untended and unattended and unharvested, and the destitute of your people shall eat. And in the wildlife of the field shall eat what is left of them. So you should do to your vineyards and your olive grove. Then it goes on, 6 days you shall accomplish your activities, and the 7th day you shall desist, so that your ox and donkey may be content, and your maidservant's son, and the sojourner may be refreshed. In this case, the sojourner being a convert. Now, again, we see a mixture of the spiritual, serving Hashem because he's commanded the land be live fallow, and yet at the same time, we're getting concerned for the individual, for the poor members of society, get to eat that 7th year, not even just the poor members of society, even the animal, the wildlife, the animals. And we see the same when it mentions the 6 days work and the 7th day, that every creature must be allowed to relax, one's behemoths, one's animals, and even the lowliest maidservant, the temporary sojourner, everybody must be made to feel good and must be treated as an equal. The Parsha then goes on to discuss these 3 yontifs, the 3 festivals, Passover, Shavuos, that's the Feast of Weeks, and Sukkot in the autumn when we're in gathering the harvest. And then Hashem promises God that if we take those covenant, we keep all the mitzvahs of Hashem, that he will expand our borders to include from the Mediterranean in today's terms, right through Baghdad to the Euphrates River, and up to now will be Jordan and parts of Lebanon, which we didn't get at the time because unfortunately with the sins of the golden calf and the Meraglim and the spies, we didn't merit it. And that will only be at the end of days, time of the Messiah and the Zman of Mashiach. Yet, and then Moshe, Aaron, the 70 elders and 2 of Aaron's sons go up the mountain, Har Sinai, not all the way up, and the ground literally under them turns into sapphire-like substances. And then only Moshe, Moses, is allowed to go the rest of the way. And it ends with Moses, after waiting 6 days, going up on the 7th day to be with Hashem, where he is going to get the Torah, both the written and oral Torah. Eventually he's going to get the 2 tablets of the 10 commandments. Now, I would like to focus more on 2 verses here. And the first verse I would like to focus on is the very first verse. The 2 verses, Ela Mishpatim, Asher Tishiv Lefanehem, Ki Takana Aved, Ivri, Eved Ivri, Sheish Shanim, Evu Vishavis, Lo, Tiflash Inam. And these are the ordinances that you should place before them. If you buy a Jewish bondsman, he should work for 6 years, and in the 7th, he should go free for no charge. Now, if one looks at that on the deeper level that's brought in the Zohar, we find something very interesting, that why 6 years? And the 7th year he goes out. That we're not talking on a deeper level. We're not talking about just being a slave on earth, but we're talking about that a person goes through 6 Gilgulim. Now 6 Gilgulim can mean 6 lifetimes, and which he's supposed to perfect himself in the many qualities of Hashem, Chesed, Gevurah, among others, 6 qualities. And if in those 6 lifetimes he or she will fulfill their purposes, then what will happen, then the 7th day, the 7th year in this case, they will go on to serve, they will go on to the next world, and they will get the reward. Now, there's 2 reasons why a person has to go through these lifetimes. 6 is the number explained here, elsewhere it can be even more lifetimes, but Arizal explains, but here we're talking about 6 lifetimes, is because either a person has done Averas, has done things they are not supposed to do, and the Mishpatim, Ela Mishpatim, these laws, are to help us rectify that. And, or we have not completed the goal that God set for us when he sent our soul down into a body on earth, in this world, and he's given, or she, more opportunities to fulfill the purpose that Hashem wanted them, God, to in the first place. Now, so one purpose here is completion, yet another purpose that is mentioned later is that there are 4 heads of damages of Nezikin that a person can be obligated to pay for. as summarized, it's in this parsha, but it's summarized in the Mishnah. Arba avot nezikin, Hashor, Habor, the ox, the boar, the pit that one leaves open or reopens, Hamava, Habe'er. Now, the first two are simple. The word Hamaviyah can either mean types of damage done by a shore with its teeth, with its hooves, with more rubbing against the wall. There are many types of categories of that. Those are the three main ones. And the fourth one is fire, that if one has a fire and lets it get out of control and it's spread to a neighbor's property and damages his property and his animals, he or she is liable to pay the damages. Now that is on a basic level. On a more advanced level, these four types of damages are not talking only about the physical end, but that we're dealing with klipot. Now, klipot are sparks of kedusha that are entrapped in material of tuma, impurity. And in fact, these four nezikin, these four forms of damages, are connected the four avot, who are Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and David HaMelech. And that every time one does a mitzvah, one is freeing oneself and is elevating the universe and elevating him or herself. Now, even with this, there is still even another level. How did these klipot come to be in the first place? The klipot started with, came from the time of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, and were introduced into the world because they committed the sin of eating from the Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, where good and evil became mixed. Now, this resulted in every human being, all of us, descend from the souls of Adam and Chava, which had many, many parts. And the people, therefore, all of us, therefore, have elements of klipot, of impurity. And it is our job by learning Torah and keeping the commandments, the mitzvahs, we are purifying ourselves. And it's very interesting that there are 613 mitzvahs, and the body is made up of 248 bones, and also, which are the positive mitzvahs, the things that one should do. And there are 365 sinews, negative mitzvahs that are compared to two things, either the sinews of the human body or it's also talking about the 365 days of the year. And actually both can fit together. In any event, so each time one does a mitzvah, one is perfecting one part of his or her body. And ultimately, by doing so, the person is elevating not only him or herself, and it's not only improving their physical and spiritual bodies, it has an impact in the higher worlds. which will ultimately allow for the perfection of the universe, and then the coming of the Messiah in the end of days. And may we, in the coming weeks, continue growth and truly improve ourselves and the whole world around us, as well as the higher spiritual worlds. Shabbat Shalom and good Shabbos.